Hello, everybody. Welcome to Top of the Hops. Can anybody hear me out there? If you're out there, just give me a thumbs up so you can hear me. Oh, you can hear me, Dave? Thanks. That's great. So, anyway, this is Top of the
We
Hops.
all did it like robots.
Yes, I am your host, Mike Riker. And as you see, I have a panel of guests. Today, we are doing top 5 hair bands. My first guest, the host and creator of the greatest wrestling show on the planet Earth from SiriusXM's Busted Open. It's my friend, Dave LaGreca. Dave, what's up, buddy?
I'm excited to be here. I can't wait, man. I got
Yes.
my list ready to go. I'm ready to argue. I'm ready to rant. Let's go. Let's go.
I love it. Guest number 2, he's a musician. He's a YouTube creator. With his channel, Joel Does Music, where he interviews musical artists and the latest musical news. He's my coworker. He's also my friend, Joel Carasquillo. Joel, what's up, buddy?
What's happening, dude? Hey, I'm so proud of you for pronouncing my last name correctly. Yes.
Yes, finally. Excellent, excellent. Of course, last but not least, she's a former jock, like she calls herself, on WDHA in North New Jersey. She was also a former DJ on Sirius XM's Hair Nation.
Woo!
She's one of the coolest chicks in the business, Kim Mulligan. Kim, thanks. Appreciate you for joining me.
I
love
think
it.
I'm the nerdiest chicks in the business, to be honest.
I love it. So,
I'm drinking the Yoda mug. So.
I got 3 people who don't drink beer, but what are you guys drinking today? Dave, what do you got?
First.
I do have a beer. I have Iron Maiden Trooper beer
Okay.
that I'll be consuming during the course of the show today.
Okay. What kind of beer is it?
I don't know.
Sorry for the tough
IPA.
questions. Okay,
It's
IPA.
an IPA.
Joel does not drink beer in the morning, so were you drinking coffee there, Joel?
I was going to add in some Kahlua, but I thought, wait, let me check the fridge. And I don't have Kahlua, so sorry to disappoint you.
Unbelievable. Disappointing. All right, Kim, you have something special for me, you say? Let's take a look.
I went shopping. I went thematic, and I was thinking 80s, and I was thinking, well, what did we drink in the 80s? And I said, well, what did I drink in the 80s? And I'm not proud of this, but what I drank in the 80s was...
Ooh, Southern Comfort.
But yeah, Little Southern Comfort and Coke. That's how I used to drink it. Or there was a very popular drink back then. Dave, Mike, you might remember it. The Alabama Slammer.
Sure. Loved Alabama Slammers.
It tasted
Yeah.
like St. Joseph's baby aspirin, but it was a favorite.
Yeah, I used to love that. Yeah, excellent. So I am drinking. So Grateful Dead's not a hair band, but I do have their beer. So I'll be drinking that today. It's an IPA, very nice and juicy. So,
And I have to. I won't be drinking this. I won't.
I'm the only one drinking. So all of you guys, I'll drink enough
Mike,
for
are
all
you
3
a
of
big-
us.
So Mike, to keep it on topic, are you a big fan of IPAs?
IPAs are my favorite,
Oh, okay, all right.
and a lot of people don't like IPAs because it's too hoppy or it's like they got a grapefruit taste. But I like that taste. I like IPAs are probably my favorite style of beer.
All right, so I know what to get you for Christmas.
And I have another
thank you.
question. I have a beer-related question for Mike and Dave. Joel, you were a baby or not even born, so I'm not going to ask you. But what were you drinking in the 80s, Mike? What was your drink?
Zima.
No, I swear to God, I thought that was 90s.
Zima's 90.
Oh, you're right. 80s. Yeah, I was young. I wasn't really drinking. I was young. I wasn't drinking
Dave?
that much. Probably Burroughs and James.
I mean,
Yes, wine coolers.
Wine
Right.
coolers.
Old school like red can Bud.
Yes, and that's what I was thinking. I also thought of Bud Long Necks.
Yeah, but like red can Bud for sure.
Yeah, see, when I used to drink Bud and stuff, I hated it. So I didn't drink beer until I really got into my 40s.
Oh,
Ah.
wow, okay.
And this is very 80s too. I worked at Bennigan's at later.
Oh
in the
my
80s.
God, yeah.
And I just remember what people were drinking there, and girls drank a lot of like Sex on the Beach,
Sex on the
stupid
Beach,
drinks like
yep.
that. And all the
Nice.
guys drank beer or shots.
And even though it's a little off topic, since it was the 80s and I worked at a grocery store in the 80s when I was in high school, I also did whippets. Not that I don't condone that behavior, but I also did whippets. So,
Wow, I'm shocked, Dave.
red, and,
Okay,
and let me
that
just
explains a
add-
lot.
I'm a walking public service announcement that they do kill brain cells. So between the red can Bud and the whippets, in 1989. It's a wonder I'm still here. So
And everything paired
Well-
nicely with a Marlboro Light or a
Yes.
Marlboro Red.
and then you got miles, so you were able to get a bag and a T-shirt. So
Yes. Yes. Joe Kelly
Well-
t-shirt.
yeah,
Hey. Well, speaking of the 80s, we are discussing top 5 hair bands. But before we do our top 5, I want to get you guys' opinion on this. Your definition of a hair band. Kim, I'll start with you.
All right. I don't like to define music. It bothers me. And since we all work in radio, it's weird that I don't like to define music because it's kind of important in our business. But as far as hair bands go, I want to talk about it in terms of why I eliminated who I eliminated, and probably the face that comes to most people's minds, or the head of hair that comes to most people's minds, is John Bon Jovi or Bon Jovi when you say hair band. Now, I eliminated them because they just transcended the whole genre. They went on into the 90s. They went on into the 2000s. And a lot of these bands are still around. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying Bon Jovi's better or greater than all these bands. I'm just saying Bon Jovi transcended the genre. And they kind of defined it by transcending it, as weird as that sounds. They were kind of like, I'd put them on a level of U2. If anybody's listening, they'll probably hate me for saying that, but I put them on that level.
all right.
Joel, what about you? Let me go to Joel. 'Cause I'm interested in your definition because, like I said, the three of us are kind of around the same age. Me, Dave, and Kim. You're in your late 20s. I'm interested to hear what your definition is.
Well, with hair metal, I see it as split up into two different eras. You got like the early to mid 80s with, the heavy hitters like Poison and Rat. And then you have the late 80s into like 1992 is like the cutoff, in my opinion, where you have bands like Bullet Boys, Firehouse, and Skid Row. So I would say that overall, when it comes to hair metal, you have that slick pop production and the music that you're listening to. You have those big anthemic choruses, the guys that dressed up looking like women, makeup, the big hair. But then with the second era of hair metal, the makeup wasn't really present. It wasn't as present as the first era. So it's kind of like a mixed bag when it comes to what hair metal really is. But that's kind of like the overlying theme right there.
I just want to piggyback onto something Joel said. Two things are important. You said the big anthemic ballad. Yeah, that pretty much defines hair metal. The stadium chorus with the more upbeat songs, that's very important. The production, and Def Leppard, who I also eliminated because they first of all, they hate being called a hair band, so I just eliminated them for that. That production value that they had kind of defined it too. And the look, my God, it's sexy and sleazy. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Dave, what about you?
So I think all of you kind of have defined it in a way. I look at it differently. And Joel, there's a couple of bands that you mentioned that I definitely cross off the list. One of them is Skid Row. Like I never looked at Skid Row as a hair metal band. And I agree with you, Kim, like Def Leppard and Bon Jovi, they kind of hit the scene before like hair metal even became something of a category that people were actually paying attention to. So and you said something like sexy and sleazy, Kim, and I agree with that. I look at a hair metal band where it's a perfect balance of the music and the style and the look.
Absolutely.
Like the music definitely doesn't come first, but also the look and the style doesn't come first. I feel like it's almost equal. So when I look at the bands that I have, I think it's a band that really defined that era of the 80s.
I can't wait to hear your list because we've already disagreed on something.
Wow.
Okay, no.
Same here. Yep.
So for me, like Bon Jovi, Def Leppard, Skid Row, those bands are not on my list because I just feel like, and I also feel like, just like when people talk about grunge from the 90s, they think of Seattle. So when I think of hair metal, I automatically think of West Hollywood and the
very
Sunset
interesting,
Strip and the whiskey. So all the bands that are on my list came from that area and kind of defined the Sunset Strip of the mid to late 80s. So
Yeah.
I like where you went with it. I went in a totally different direction, but I love what you did.
You know, when I think of hair bands, I think of three things: sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know,
Amen,
it's
brother.
just- yeah, I just, you know, you mentioned Bon Jovi, Kim, and you're totally right. Like, and we talked about this, you know, at work. You know, Bon Jovi songs, they're not about all these women. They're about one woman. They're about
Yeah.
love and,
Yeah.
never say goodbye or whatever songs you want to talk about.
I die for you.
Die for you. Yeah, that's the perfect one. Right. And it's totally different from other bands. I just think, you know, yeah, they may look the part, but when you listen to the music, I don't think they act the part as far as musically, as far as hair bands. So
No,
that's
they were
that's just
the
my
hair-
opinion.
If we're gonna call them a hair band, they're the hair band you could take home to mom. You know?
Yes.
They were-
Yeah, you know, but I
Fair
have
enough.
a question. And Kim, you probably can answer this better than anybody. Do any of the bands that we have on any of our lists, are they proud of being a hair metal band?
I don't.
Mm.
I can't really say. No, I don't think so, because I think that term was pejorative at first, and then it became something that, Hair Nation, the whole type, a lot of bands, and I'm going to spill some beans now. I think it offended a lot of bands that the channel was called Hair Nation in the beginning. There were some artists who didn't want to go on, be interviewed on the channel because of that. I probably shouldn't have said that, but I did.
No, but somebody who's on that channel still to this day, Eddie Trunk, always says that he hates that name and he hates that label. So, and he works on the channel.
I don't
So-
hate it. I understand why Eddie would say that, because in the olden days, if you like this sort of music, like Dave, I know you're much heavier than I was, and the guys got it much worse than the girls, because this was chick music. Let's face it. A lot of it is chick music. So you were called a poser.
Yes.
So it could have been called Poser Nation. So Hair Nation is
Yeah,
much-
no, and Kim, you just said something that's 100% true. All these bands that I'm going to mention, if you asked me these questions in '86, I would have been like, I don't listen to these bands.
Yeah.
I don't, these are bands that I never listened to. They're posers. They're commercial. I hate them. But as time has gone on, I guess maybe the nostalgia factor, it reminds me of a certain period in my life. I listen to these bands a hell of a lot more now than I did when they were popular and in their heyday.
And honestly, I didn't even, when this was all coming into being, like there was Van Halen, let's just call them the prototype of these sort of bands.
Yeah.
Beautiful blonde front man, the unbelievably talented. And that's something all of these bands that we're probably going to name have in common: the unbelievable guitar playing.
Yeah.
It's just gymnastics on a fretboard. It's these guys, anyone who says they're not good musicians should take another listen. So
agree.
that's always bothered me about that. And, you said before the music didn't come first. Maybe not to us, but I'm sure to them, like, the George Lynches of the world and the Warren DeMartinis of the world. You can't compare to those guys. And even like the lesser known guys, like a Ronnie Latecro from TNT. These guys can play, and they're incredibly technical, and some of them are classically trained. Randy Rhoads was a classically trained guitarist.
Yeah.
So you can't take that away from them. And I don't know where I was going with this.
No,
That's a good point.
Bravo, Kim. Bravo.
Because Kim, like somebody who never would have mentioned this back in the day, but now he waves the flag and mentions all the time, is like a Billy Corgan, the front man of Smashing Pumpkins. He admits freely now his favorite band is Dokken, and that he grew up listening to Dokken. He never would have said that in 1994.
Right.
Another. They're perfect. The rhythm section in that band was great too. I mean, they get overlooked as people who are great musicians because of their look. And I remembered where I was going with it. I came to this kind of out of force, because I'm a classic rocker. I mean, there's Pete Townsend on the wall behind me. I've always been a classic rocker. That was my first love: The Who, the Stones, Bruce Springsteen, all that stuff. So when I was at Seton Hall, the radio station, just right before I got on it, they flipped to the hard rock, heavy metal, what they're known for now format. So I was just like, oh, this is kind of lame. But I was like, but I want people to listen to me, and people will listen to this. So the first time I went to a club to see, and it was Great White, and it was out in Queens. I think it was Lemoore East. There was a Lemoore East and Lemoore Far East. I think it was Lemoore East and Queens. I had so much fun. And again, it had more to do with the crowd and just the fun and the drinking and the guys and the girls, and just the whole vibe was so dead on. It was so different than if you went to a Smiths concert, or, you know, even like an Eric Clapton show or an Allman show, and everyone's like into the music. No, we were into each other. It was like a whole vibe. It was just so much fun. So that turned me. Like in one night, I had it was like I was a born again hairband chick. It was crazy.
And,
so
and
I became a lover of it.
And really quick, like, I'm glad that you brought this up, but growing up, WSOU was like what everybody listened to. Like anybody who liked that kind of music, hard rock, heavy metal, like WSOU was our go-to radio station. So like Kim, like you're always going to be remembered no matter what you do for the rest of your life. Like you're going to be remembered as Kim Mulligan from WSOU.
But the problem is I peaked early. I'm like the Al Bundy. I'm like Al Bundy.
Hair bands, you said, is kind of got like this negative moniker. Do you think that's changed over the last few years, though?
No, I think because they're musicians. I look, I think I'd hate it too. If I'm really being honest with myself, and I knew what I did 99.9% of the population can't do, and you were calling me a hairband, or or just making fun of me because of the way, maybe my hair was naturally like that, like Rick Savage and Def Leppard. His hair was naturally like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, let's get to it. Dave, I'm gonna start with you. Give me from 5 to 1 your top 5 hair bands.
So you want me? We're not going 5, 5, 5, 4, 4, 4. 3,
No, I want to get out of the way first. Yeah, I want to see what you got.
All right. So here's my top 5. And again, all these bands come from the same period and kind of have the same molding. And man, it's unbelievable. But 3 out of these 5 bands are still doing major tours today, which blows my mind. But number 5, I have Warrant as my number 5 top 5 hair metal band. They kind of defined it later on, 87, 88, 89. Cherry Pie is kind of one of those hair metal anthems that people think about. If you ever see their videos, Down Boys being the perfect example, the synchronized head banging and the synchronized dancing and stuff, like they defined kind of that MTV hair metal era. So number 5, I have Warrant. And again, all these bands, I feel like it's a blend of image and the music. Like I feel like they're all on the same level. Number 4, Faster Pussycat. Again, Kim, to your point, like the fist banging stadium anthems, Faster Pussycat, unlike Warrant was more of the pretty boy sex appeal, where Faster Pussycat was definitely more on the sleazy side.
Yeah.
They sold the sleaze, but still that image sold, I think, just as much.
Just the titles alone, Bathroom Wall.
Yeah, like they didn't mind being dirty. They like that. They like being dirty.
That's like you, Dave.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Now, number 3, and this definitely defines MTV, 1984, Sunset Strip, Whiskey A Go Go, The Viper, Rat. And
my man.
But here's where Rat kind of broke the mold when it comes to some of the things that we've been talking about.
What you're gonna say.
Rat never had that ballad. They never had the hit ballad.
Yeah, I had that in my notes.
Yeah,
I had that in my notes. Yeah,
they were able to do it with having, but also Rat was never hit multi-platinum. They kind of hovered at a certain $1 million selling, but they never had that hit album. But Out of the Cellar, like when you talk about quintessential hair metal albums, Out of the Cellar is going to be near or top of the list. So
and that was Tawny Katane on the cover, wasn't it?
Tawny Katane on the cover. I have the Rat Out of the Cellar album hangs on my wall where I do my show every day, because I got to be very friendly with Tawny Katane just before she passed on. And I'll never forget 8th grade year as my birthday present. My buddy Mike got me Rat Out of the Cellar for my birthday. The first thing I said is, who's the chick on the cover and do you have her number? And I was actually able to write her phone number on the album cover.
That's
That's
awesome.
amazing.
So it hangs,
Dreams do come true.
on my wall where I do my show every day. So Rat, number 3. Number 2, Poison. And I think Poison might even be the band that people think of right away when they think of hair metal. Again, the synchronized headbanging, the over-the-top makeup and clothes, fluorescent colors. But no band defines hair metal. The balance of music, the balance of the style and the sleaze, and even a little bit of the sexiness. And number 1 for me, without a doubt, is Motley Crue. So my top 5: Warrant at 5, Faster Pussycat at 4, Rat at 3, Poison at 2, Motley Crue at 1. Joel, Kim, I don't know what your top 5 is going to be, but this is the
quintessential
top 5
Wow.
of hair metal.
He wants to be definitive.
Motley Crue.
That's a great list. Really
It
solid,
is.
Dave.
I will say this: mine is very close to yours, Dave. Very, very close. So,
Same.
yeah.
I did not
So,
expect that.
yeah.
I expected
So,
you to be closer to me.
interesting.
I'm
Let's look.
offended.
I'm interested in Joel's top 5. Here we go.
Wait, hold on. Before we get into the
Oh my God!
I don't mean to take over here. I'm sorry.
Take over.
Take all
Dave.
the time.
Do any of you have any objections? Is there a band on my list where you're like, no way, that's not hair metal?
Well, I will say I came late to the game when it came to hair metal music. It was basically after it was done that I got into it. So if I'm not too familiar with Faster Pussycat. Give me something I should go out and listen to. Song, album, anything I should listen to when it comes to Faster Pussycat.
Bathroom Wall, that song, and Babylon.
Babylon,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you need to listen to that.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
those are the 2 I'd say biggest hits. But if just download their first album.
Yeah, and they had the ballad too at House of Pain. Like they had,
That's right.
yeah, they had like
Okay.
they had a big ballad, and like again, like Warren had I Saw Red, Faster Pussycat had House of Pain, Poison had a slew of. Every Rose Has Its Thorn is probably the most.
Yeah.
I'm glad you started with Warrant though, because I think they get overlooked. He was such a great singer, Janie Lane. He not many singers of that era used their lower register like he did. He sang. He seems a beautiful singer.
And unfortunately, he passed away before like the resurgence of this type of music.
Yeah.
Like, and again, I mean, seriously, Kim, did you ever think there would be a time where like Motley Crue is headlining stadiums? Like 2 years ago, they were headlining stadiums.
I think it's funny that you say that and you brought up grunge before, because I never thought that music would end. As stupid as that sounded, because everything else ended. That rockabilly Elvis era ended. The British invasion ended. Why I thought that everyone would have long hair and tight pants forever. I thought like that's how stupid I was.
Oh, I got to ask this question.
Go ahead.
And it's one thing that needs to be brought up when we're talking about hair bands.
Sure, man.
Is I think there's a misconception on how hair metal ended in its heyday.
Probably.
A lot of people say grunge killed it, which I don't believe. I think it was already gone by the time grunge really became popular.
I agree with you.
What's that?
I agree with you.
I think it was Metallica. Like I think Metallica's Black Album is what, for better or for worse, Metallica's Black Album is what killed hair metal. It definitely was not grunge. So That's just I just want to throw that out there. Sorry.
Yeah, because on my last show I did with Raven, she had said that she thought grunge killed like the hairband movement. So that's interesting you say Metallica, Dave, because a lot of people, and we talked about this at work, Kim. It went from like party rock songs, and then grunge is like this, woe is me kind of music.
Very
So
broody.
yeah,
like
Very
to
broody.
the others, and it happened
Yeah.
all of a sudden. And I say that as
Quickly.
I'm going to say, I think hair metal kind of got watered down. I think it was just too much of the same thing happening over and over and over
It was
again.
oversaturated. The
Yeah,
party
so
was
that,
over.
that may have
Yeah.
done it, and yeah, I mean things had it. And how many times? Like I always stuck up for Metallica when they cut their hair and they did whatever they did, because how many times can you do the same thing over and over and over again?
And I
Yeah.
just feel like I think it was Nothing Else Matters. The video for Nothing Else Matters off the Black album, you see Lars Ulrich throwing darts at a poster of Kip Winger.
Yeah.
And that was
interesting.
Not nice.
not nice.
Yeah.
And Winger is a band that, you know what? Winger I should have put in my top 5. I'm already debating my own top 5.
No,
I mean, they're an
now that
honorary
you say that,
mention.
great musicians,
Yes.
incredible musicians, every single one of them.
Absolutely. All right, Joel. I'm interested in your top 5 here.
Man, you're
What we
really
got?
mean some fire. This young buck,
Yeah, let's
huh?
do it. You're
All
the one that came to work. I don't have my top 5 yet. I don't have my top 5 yet. Let's
Alright.
hear it.
All right, so my number 5 is a band that I think deserved all the flowers in the world. Very underrated. LA Guns. Now, those
Nice,
first,
Joel.
those
Nice.
first 2 albums, the self-titled and Cocked and Loaded, man, the songwriting was incredible. I mean, Phil Lewis, incredibly underrated vocalist. I'm glad he's still around today and killing it live. Tracy Guns, underrated guitar player. Just the things that he was doing. It wasn't just shredding for the sake of just being flashy. He knew how to serve the songs, how to climax in the song, like build up to the climax, and then just give you the goods with the solos that he would deliver. I mean, the Ballad of Jane, one of the best ballads of that era. Never Enough. That chorus is still in my head when I first discovered it as a 13-year-old. Still in my head almost 2 decades later. So there you go. Number 5, LA Guns. Number 4, I'm going to do Poison. I agree with you, Dave. Like when a lot of people think of the hair metal era, Poison comes to mind. That's definitely one of the bands for me. It's just that feel-good party energy that they have in their music. CeCe DeVille, another monster guitar player. So that's number 4 for me, Poison. Number 3, I'm going with Rat.
Nice.
Riff frickin' City from that band. Just, I think they're one of the bands that had an amazing 3-album run with their first 3 albums. And then the guitar chemistry between Warren DeMartini and Robin Crosby. Like when I think of them, I also think of Phil Collin and Steve Clark from Def Leppard. Like they have that just magical chemistry that you know who the guitar players are when you hear the riffs or like the twin solos accommodating each other. Magical chemistry. Number 2, feel free to crucify me, but I will die on this hill. Skid Row is number 2.
I love it. I'm with you. Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. I think they got very heavy, Joel, but I think that first album works as calling it hair metal.
It was. I mean, they were definitely more, again, they were the hair metal band of the second era, late 80s to 1992 when it went extinct. But the songwriting is just incredible. The ballads, obviously, phenomenal.
But
they were able to transcend, just like Bon Jovi. I mean, Slave to the Grind, that's more of a heavy metal album, even extreme metal at times and speed metal. But that was a band that had a classic hair metal debut album, in my opinion. And then number 1, no surprise, Motley Crue. Come on. They're the ones, I think, they were hair metal before hair metal was even coined as a term. It was like MC5 and the Stooges. They were punk before punk was even a term. They were proto-punk. To me, Motley Crue were proto-hair metal. And I think they helped to basically carve the path for what it would become in the 80s and then its legacy today.
Yeah.
Great top 5. Dave, I know you were shaking your head at Skid Row.
No, yeah, but I understand it, and I can understand it, and I think there's a lot of bands where I wouldn't necessarily say they are. I would label them as hair metal, but they had hair metal albums. Like I think Skid
Yeah.
Row's first album is a hair metal album,
Yes.
but their second album is anything but
Absolutely
hair
not.
Oh,
yeah,
I agree
like,
with you 110%.
and then
Slave
you
to
know
the
another
grind,
band like
turn
that
the
would be like
corner.
Whitesnake. Like Whitesnake had
Right.
a hair metal album, but I wouldn't define them as a hair metal band.
They're a
So,
classic rock band. I mean,
Yeah.
they're right out of the Deep Purple family tree.
Yeah,
So,
And
yeah.
honestly, guys, that's like me with Def Leppard too. Like, by no means were they a hair metal band. They were part of the new wave of British heavy metal movement in the early 80s. But Hysteria and Adrenalize are the only two albums I would consider to be hair metal because, again, you had that slick pop production
Yeah.
from Mutt Lange and then just the anthemic choruses and the ballads, like very hair metal elements right there.
Pour Some Sugar on Me is like the template of how to do one of those songs.
and,
Yeah.
and, it,
Hair
and it's
metal
Absolutely.
fun-
101.
and it's funny, Def Leppard, you just said it, Joel. Like they were part of that, British heavy metal scene. Yeah, that new wave of British heavy metal, but
Yep.
they didn't want to be labeled as new wave of British heavy metal.
No.
And then they were labeled as heavy metal, and they didn't want to be labeled as heavy metal. And then they were labeled as hair metal, and they didn't want to be labeled
Hell no.
as hair metal. Like they just did not want to. And it's
Well-
hard to, when you look at their history of albums, it's hard to put a label on
Well,
Def
when
Leppard.
you hear them talk about their music, they talk about T-Rex and Queen, and I think they
Mott the
see
Hoople
themselves-
too.
Yeah, Mott the Hoople. They see themselves as coming out of that, and I think
Yes.
more so, I can hear a lot of T-Rex in like Rocket and songs like that.
Oh,
So
sure.
I could see why they'd say that, and they're British too, and maybe they didn't want to be associated with the whole West Coast sleazy thing. I'm sure they did things underneath that rotating circular stage that are unfit for us to talk about right now. But maybe they didn't want to be associated with that. I don't, for whatever reason, they just don't like it. And you have to respect that.
And that's fair.
You-
Absolutely.
Do you guys think if a band has only one album that's considered a metal album, are considered hair metal bands?
Like, give me an example. Who would that?
Well,
be?
like the one you said with Skid Row.
I
Yeah.
said Skid Row. I mean, I would just say yes because it was the end of the 80s. I think that was an album that perfectly encapsulated that decade. I mean, obviously they transcended it with Slave to the Grind, but I just
Mhm.
think that that debut album, it had all of the elements that defined hair metal. They didn't have the not glam metal, but the hair metal look with the heavy makeup and the androgynous look. But
Yeah.
Well,
like-
Sebastian was
yeah.
very beautiful with the high cheekbones, and he just listen. I will quote a guy that I went to Seton Hall with, who said,
Yes.
upon seeing Skid Row and Sebastian, but we're looking at a picture of Sebastian Bach, he said, "Wow, I wish I could meet a chick who looked like that." I guess it's like leggy blondes. I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting because you mentioned Whitesnake too, Dave, and again they had like the one album which was kind of like hair metal music, but most of their music is not hair metal.
No,
No.
and I think you could say that about even like to me, like the big song off the first Skid Row album is Youth Gone Wild, and that,
Yeah.
that was a pretty heavy song. Like
Right.
I kind of looked at as more of like heavy metal than hair metal, but like Joel's young, he could be wrong.
Well, Cam,
always
it's your.
say-
I know
Never
they
meet
always.
heroes.
All right, Cam, I'm excited for your top five because I have a feeling it's gonna be a little different.
It
Oh,
is,
man.
and I want to
Yeah.
say it's my personal list. These
I
were
love
the
it.
bands, they affected me, and a lot of it had to do with their live shows. That I was lucky to see in small clubs a lot of the time, like I'm sure Dave did too. And also, you said Joel could be wrong because he's young. Well, I'm the oldest one here, Dave. And
Makes me feel better.
Joel and I agree on one thing because at number 5, I've got Skid Row.
Wow. Yes.
And it's based on, and I hemmed and hawed over this, but what I based a lot of this on is what I don't turn off on my Spotify or what I don't flip the station on Hair Nation when I hear them. And I never flip the station on anything from that first Skid Row album. Sweet Little Sister. That is, to me, one of the greatest tunes of that era. And Youth Gone Wild, that's one of my angry driving songs, along with Electric Gypsy from LA Guns. That's on my angry driving playlist. And you made me feel bad about some of the bands I didn't put on the list. LA Guns was one of the bands I didn't put on, not because I don't think they're phenomenal and I love them. They have so many great songs, but I had to make room for my number 4, White Lion. And you guys, yeah.
Good one. I like that one.
Ballads hit. The lyrics, oddly enough, for the time, were very smart. It wasn't like I want action. They were smart lyrics. Wait was a great power ballad, if you want to consider that a great power ballad. They were great live. Hot Shot guitarist in Vito Bratta, and I know Eddie Trunk talks about him a lot, or Ed has interviewed him. But he's it's a shame that he just doesn't play. He doesn't play out. He doesn't do anything musical anymore, because he was like him and Nuno Betancourt. They were like the next Eddie Van Halen.
Mm-hmm.
But that definitely White Lion, and they were always great live. I loved seeing them at L'Amour or wherever we saw them, Studio One. Number 3, I think we all have this band on the list, because when you look at the album cover of their debut album, Look What the Cat Dragged In, that pretty much to me defines the whole bubblegum, saccharine, dripping, sweet, sticky sleaze era that we were living in at the time. It was androgynous. It was hilarious. It didn't take itself serious, and it was colorful. Yeah, Poison. They got to be number 1. Great live then. And even I saw them. They did a bunch of DHA Rock the Parks. I know they did more than one. I feel like they did more than one. Or maybe that was Motley Crue. I don't know. But I saw them not too long ago, and they still sounded great. Bret Michaels still sings like a champion, puts on a great show, loves what he's doing, loves the fans. So I had to put them at number 3. Nice. Number two, no one mentioned. And I think what's interesting about my list is they're all East Coast. Dave went all West Coast. So I think we're going to have a little battle. I think this band is the definitive East Coast band. And the first time I heard them, I heard them before I saw them. I was like, oh, they sound like AC/DC. Then I saw them and I said, who put the mascara and eyeliner on AC/DC?
It's a good
and
one.
you probably figured out now it's Cinderella that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The first album, great hair metal album. The second album, it was like to me, that one was the departure with Don't Know What You Got Till It's Gone. Great piano ballad, very Aerosmith. Then they kind of leaned more towards Aerosmith. That's still one of my favorite albums of all time, Long Cold Winter. And then by the time they got to the third album, it was like, are they the Rolling Stones? These guys, I just think they evolved so much over time and went from a band that I was kind of like met on to a band that I still listen to today. Coming Home is a great song off the second album. Cinderella is just the best. Gypsy Road, come on. I love them. And again, this is all very personal. It's, at number 1, here's where you guys are going to, and I agonized over this. I knew I was going to put them on the list, but I said, who was the band that I went to see? I feel like I went to see this band like every other week. And they were a great band from the Maryland area, I think from Baltimore. They used to play up at L'Amour and up at Studio One a lot. All those great clubs down on Route 35, like Club Benet and Mingles. They play on all those places. And I'm talking about Kicks. And I don't. Yeah, they are my all-time. They were a bit older than most of the guys of that era. They were a little bit older. They just retired a couple of years ago from touring. And they were just, when I tell you they got a room going, they had one song, and you guys probably know it, Cold Shower. And the singer would come out with the umbrella, twirling the umbrella. By the time they got to Sex, that, and you talk about an anthem. I don't know if this could ever be a stadium anthem. The whole room was chanting sex. It was just like a frenzied, chaotic. It was so much fun. And I just remember running down the boardwalk in Asbury Park because we were late to see a Kick show.
Nice.
Wow. Kicks.
But-
Interesting.
Yeah,
Did not expect that.
yeah, no, their catchphrase. Yeah. No, I'll never forget them. I love them to this day.
I remember
love-
their farewell tour. You're right. They had that farewell. They played BB King's in New York. I remember.
Was it 2023?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like one of the last shows at BB King's before it closed.
They were the band that defined that late 80s era for me.
Yeah, I love the White Lion pick. I thought about them. They're not my top 5, but like you said, Wait and When the Children Cry. And did they do a version of Radar Love?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, which was really great. Yeah. So
they did.
I love the White Lion pick. What about you guys? What do you think about Kim's list there?
I'm
I
happy
think-
you added. Oh, sorry, Dave.
No, go ahead, please, Joe.
All right, cool. Thank you. I'm happy that you added Cinderella, Kim, because originally they were going to be on my list, but I kept listening to LA Guns all week and just fell in love with those first 2 albums again. But I think what separated Cinderella from the other bands of that era, their contemporaries, was that blues influence, that bluesy undertone. Tom Kiefer, man's got pipes. And
Absolutely.
he's still got it, whereas like some singers from the era, some of them can still hit those notes, some can't, unfortunately, and they have to accommodate by singing in different keys for the songs. But Tom Kiefer still got it. That bluesy tone is really what stuck me to them.
And you heard it progress as they went on. On the second album, they had Bad Seamstress Blues, and they did get really, really blue. By the third album, Heartbreak Station, I think that was the third album, Heartbreak Station. They were just dripping in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dave,
Yeah,
what's
I'm
your
kind of
thoughts?
with Joel here. I when I think of Cinderella, I don't think hair metal. I know they get lumped into it, but
Sure.
they're kind of in the same camp to me as Skid Row.
Mm.
The White Lion pick is tremendous, and I
Yeah.
didn't even think of White Lion, and this is where again I'll bring up SOU. WSOU, I really feel put White Lion on the map. Like
I remember they played. We were playing the first album too, "Fight to Survive," before the album with all the hits that Z100 and PLJ were playing. So I know we were on to them way before.
And I remember listening. I remember exactly where I was in my car listening when they came to SOU and presented SOU with a platinum album for Pride.
Oh,
because they were so thankful of how much airplay they got. That was kind of like SOU's band. Like when I think of SOU, I think of White Lion and I think of the Tendencies, because you guys couldn't say Suicidal Tendencies. So
I can't believe you remember that. There was so much we couldn't say. Wait, we have a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Susie. She's one of my subscribers.
Oh,
So she said, yeah, she was Susie. She was not really into hair bands, but I like Guns N' Roses, White Snake, AC/DC, Quiet Riot, and a few others that were my main go-tos in the 80s. Yeah, a couple of those.
Riot was important, and none of us
Yeah.
mentioned them.
well,
Yeah.
here's the thing with Quiet Riot. I feel like they kind of fell off the map after their successful singles, in my opinion. Like, I've seen live footage of them, and like, all due respect to those that are no longer with us in the band, but they weren't that great live past their heyday. That's why I didn't include them. And honestly, they didn't have enough of the hits that really defined my top 5 list. But I think they're an important band of that era, just nothing to write home about, in my opinion.
I agree with you, but I think they kicked off the era with.
they had the
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I think
number
that's
one
what
album.
started. Yeah.
First-
Yes.
So
Didn't
Kim,
forget
let me
about
let me ask you about Kicks. Was it seeing them live? Was that what put over the top for you?
Yeah, I think it was. Even though
Okay.
their albums are great too, because I still pull out Midnight Dynamite, toss that
okay.
on, give it that's got. I Blow My Fuse is a great album. I think those two are probably, people might disagree with me, but those are my favorite.
Got it.
But
All right,
yeah,
so-
the live show was just, it was fun. And that
Yeah.
if you weren't having fun at those shows, then hair metal isn't for you.
Definitely not, from what it
I
sounded
don't know how
like.
you could not have fun at those shows.
Right, right. Now, speaking of Guns N' Roses, now, Dave, you claim that you're in the Paradise City video, right?
Yeah, I am in the Paradise City video.
Where do you where? Like in the crowd of millions at East Rutherford?
No, when you watch the video,
Yes.
they have there's two settings. There's Castle Donington, and then there's Giant Stadium.
The real Giant Stadium.
Oh, yeah.
Real Giant Stadium.
Yeah, not
and
MetLife.
the black and white's Castle Donington. The color is Giant Stadium.
Okay.
So that I was at that concert. Guns N' Roses opened. It was Guns N' Roses, Deep Purple, and Aerosmith.
Wow.
It was
Good lineup.
summer of '88.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is
Wow.
it summer of '87 or summer of '88? But it was August, I remember. And if for a split second, you see a very young Dave LaGreca in the audience, 17-year-old Dave LaGreca, because I remember I had just got my license the month before. So,
Is
that was
that
like the first concert I actually drove to.
That's exciting.
Is that 17-year-old with long hair, Dave LaGreca?
Oh, yeah.
And a
Oh, yeah,
mullet?
Yeah.
Or were you hitting it with the hairspray?
Listen, nobody rocked the mullet. Nobody rocked the mullet like the LaGreca brothers.
Oh, when you told me Dave had
Powerful
long
mullet.
hair, I was trying to picture if it was a mullet or like long.
No, see, like my brother had long hair. He looked like Meatloaf. He had
Yes.
long hair like
Yeah.
Meatloaf. I had a mullet. Like it was short in the sides,
Okay.
short on the
I'm trying to
top, but long
picture
in the
it.
back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Gotcha. I'd love
What
to
is
see
it,
those pictures.
Party in the back, all business up front.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as a matter of
Incredible.
fact, I think I may have a picture of a mullet wearing Dave LaGreca.
Oh, I have to check that out. I don't think I've seen pictures of you with the mullet. So
Amazing.
yeah, he's gonna look for it. So meanwhile, while he's looking for his mullet picture, I will give you a quick my top 5.
Mhm.
So I agree with you, Kim. My number 5 is also Skid Row, which I'm sure Dave's gonna shake
All
his head.
three of us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
And again, and again, I got to hair music late.
Yeah.
So the first time I saw Sebastian Bach was in a play called Jekyll and Hyde.
Yes.
Oh,
That he-
wow.
And he was unbelievable. His voice was just tremendous, and that would made me a fan. I literally went out and bought the first album right then and there because I was so impressed with his voice. So I love, obviously Youth Gone Wild, 18 Life, I'll Remember You. So that's why he's in my number 5. Number 4, I agree with you guys too. I love Rat. Anybody that puts Milton Berle in their videos, I'm a fan
Yeah.
of. So I that drew me right away. I always, you mentioned it, Dave. They never had that big power ballad, but boy,
No.
I always thought they were kind of more bluesy, especially later on. Like they were really they kind of went out of their not comfort zone, but they kind of changed a little bit once they got out of the cellar. I thought they became a little bit more bluesy later on in their career.
Yeah.
Which I liked a lot. I love their music. I think they're great. My number 3 is Warrant.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, Dave. Cherry Pie is the quintessential kind of like hair metal song. Seeing Bobby Brown. That was the name of the model, not Bobby Brown from the Whitney Houston. Yeah,
Yeah.
she won Star Search. Remember Star Search? She was on Star. She was the famous supermodel on the old Ed McMahon show, Star Search. And she had won the $1 million prize, and then she got that video right after that.
Wow.
Nice.
So yeah.
The Great White Once Bitten, Twice Shy video.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. I love them. I look, the Dirty, Rotten, Filthy, Stinking Rich is great. And it's a shame what happened to him. I thought he was amazing. My number 2 is Poison. To me, they have the ultimate rock ballad, and Every Rose Has Its Thorn. And you mentioned it, Kim. I heard him not too long ago. He still sounds really good. In fact, out of the top 5, I think he still sounds the best out of the 5 still. We can mention about Vince Neil, who doesn't sound great these days, or
God,
even Sebastian Bach has kind of lost his luster a little bit, but he still sounds like he did back in the 80s. He sounds great. And of course, gotta mention CeCe DeVille. He's just tremendous. And you mentioned it too. I think it was you, Kim, about the album itself with the 4 of them on the cover. And
Yeah.
I remember as a kid, I swear to God, I saw that album. I'm like, oh my God, who are these chicks? They're the hottest chicks I've ever seen in my life. And then I looked closely. I'm like, oh shit, and I started questioning myself. But but they're tremendous, and you're right. That album should be the cover of all the hair metal bands, as far as I'm concerned. But my number one is Motley Crue. When you guys first mentioned about this show, they're the first band that came across from me.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
you got
I think
yeah.
you're right. I think they're the most important. That's why I said my list was very personal. I think you're right, and Joel's right, and everyone who put them on the list. They are the most important band. I think they are the definitive band. I think they're the most important band. I think they're probably the most popular band. If we eliminate Guns N' Roses,
Right.
Yeah, and you mentioned Vince Neil and Tommy Lee, Nikki Sixx. They're kind of household names,
Yes.
which these other bands are not. You might know the lead singer and maybe one guitarist, but Tommy Lee, you know about him. Their wives and their homemade porn videos and stuff like that.
God.
So I mean, they're the definition of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So that's why I have put them as my number one.
I mean,
and plus, yeah.
No,
Go
I was
ahead.
going to say because you mentioned their wives, they transcended the '80s. They married Baywatch chicks,
Right.
from the '90s, and then they had like a rebirth in the 2000s with that book that
Yeah.
became
Dirt.
the after school special. That reminded me of the combination of like an after school special mashed up with a VH1. Where are they now?
And
Yeah.
it's so funny, Kim, because I've read Dirt. I don't think I watched the movie on Netflix, but I read the book. It's maybe one of the most depressing books.
It's
Oh my God.
disgusting.
It's
Yeah,
like one of the most depressing books I've ever read.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that's why. Look, I think their songs are great, but I'm, and this is horrible for me to say, but I'm a little like repelled by them. I just
I understand.
I never got and maybe because I'm a chick, like I leaned more towards the Bon Jovis of the world, and stuff like that, and the less. I thought Guns N' Roses, that first album was great, but they didn't really do it for me either.
Right.
Interesting.
I would never, yeah.
Yeah. So if you guys had to say a quintessential hair metal album, which one would it be for you guys?
Ooh. Damn.
I was not prepared for that.
I'm gonna go with a band and an album that I don't even have on my list. But it's when somebody says like hair metal, it's the first album I think of, and it's gonna be Pretty Boy Floyd, Electric Boys with Electric Toys. Like that, when you look at that album, to me, that's kind of like the definition of hair metal, and probably defines a little bit the music, though I don't think it was big enough or they were popular enough to be in this discussion.
Right.
But if I had to come up with an album, that's the first album that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
Joel, how about you?
I'm torn between either Out of the Cellar or Look What the Cat Dragged In, because it captures all the energy that hair metal was about. The big anthemic choruses that we were talking about earlier and the imagery of the bands too. So it's either one of those two. Like, you can't go wrong with those.
Yeah. Tim?
I'm going with a band that wasn't on my list.
Ooh.
The band I said was just the most important band. If you want to really define the era, I'm going with Motley Crue, and I'm going with not Shout at the Devil, which was my initial reaction when you said that, but I'm going to go with Too Fast for Love.
I knew it.
Ooh.
Yep.
Okay.
And the album cover too is like a throwback to the history of rock, the leather crotch as compared to the denim crotch of Sticky Fingers.
Yeah.
That's how rock evolved from the 70s into the 80s, I think.
It's a great question, and it's funny. Like Kim just said, Too Fast for Love. I might even go with Theater of Pain, because like that kind of like that really shifted the music. Like I don't think before Theater of Pain, if there were a lot of bands that were wearing the lipstick and the eyeliner, and the pink and the fluorescent colors and stuff. Like I might even change I might even go with Motley Crue, Theater of Pain.
Interesting. Yeah, I like your selection, Kim. Like that was definitely just L.A. kind of like
Yeah.
the hard rock. So yeah, I love that album.
Just a
I think Too
shift.
Fast
I
for Love.
remember that was that 81 Too Fast for Love?
1981. That's the
81,
debut.
yeah.
Yep.
It
Yep.
was that was just in my mind a shift from what the 70s were like into what the 80s were going to be like. What
Yeah.
was about to come down the line.
Good call.
Yeah, it's a great one. So, and the last one I would ask, you guys mentioned, is there anybody else we're missing here that might be on your honorable mention? We mentioned Cinderella, we mentioned Dokken, Quiet Riot. Someone, Susie mentioned Twisted Sister. Would you consider them a hair metal band?
I'd call them like forefathers. Like I would consider these bands the forefathers, like the prototypes. Van Halen, Aerosmith,
Right.
and I'd put Twisted Sister on that, and Alice Cooper for the theatrics.
Good point.
Interesting. Dave, what about you?
I think we've covered a lot of it because I think we're really looking at the beginnings of hair metal. But I feel like, Joel and Kim said it early on that I think the image of it, you forget how really good these bands were.
Yeah.
And how great the musicianship in some of these bands. Like I just recently saw, because I was on the Jericho cruise, and he gets a lot of like Kick Axe. Like he gets a lot of these bands from the 80s to play his cruise. And I just saw the Bullet Boys.
Oh my God.
And I haven't thought of the Bullet Boys since 35 years, and they were awesome. Danger. Like they were really, they were good. And they kind of get lumped into a scene where, since that scene, they've kind of been forgotten. But a lot of these bands are still out there playing. So
Absolutely. Joel, is there one that you could think of? Anybody else we maybe missed?
I'd probably go with both Striper and
Nice.
definitely one more. I definitely want your take on this, guys. Enough's Enough.
yeah, no, enough's enough. I put in there.
I think
That's a good one.
they should be pigeonholed in there too. Definitely.
Yeah, excellent. Well, guys, this was a great time, great list. Well, all you guys,
That's it?
You gotta leave at 12 o'clock, Dave.
I gotta go
It's
too,
like-
bro.
It's 56. I'm trying to get you out of time so you can have.
I still have my pictures. My
Let me see.
look at that.
Look at
Prom.
that.
Look at that. Look at that.
That's not you.
Still at the top.
That's not you. That's
Wait.
not you.
Where was
That's
that?
a mullet.
Where was that?
Senior prom.
What, Oh, so you're getting into a limo?
Yeah. Here's a picture with my brother hanging out in the room.
Oh yeah, there we go. He does look like a meatloaf.
Out of hell.
Did he pull his hair back when he played sports? Did Don have to put it in a ponytail?
Yeah.
When
Yep.
Guys, thanks so much. Whoever joined us today, thanks so much. What's your top 5 hair and metal bands? Please comment down below. Joel, Dave, Kim, I can't thank you enough. Thank you, guys.
That was
Thank you
fun.
for having
Thank you,
me.
Mike.
Yes, thank you. Awesome. Let me just end the stream. All right. Thanks, guys.